Greetings survivors and friends, SHADOWFRAX here once again with your weekly roundup and analysis of the Rust update, and this week something rather exciting occurred over on the Facepunch website. As if by magic, a brand spanking new roadmap for Rust suddenly appeared, and I've never speed-read a document with such ravenous appetency, I can tell you. Of course, we've had road maps and even mind maps before, and these have been fulfilled with varying degrees of accuracy, which is why it's a good idea to take note of the rather obvious disclaimer at the top telling us that any dates or features mentioned here are intentions, not promises. The only promise we can confidently make is that this information is all wrong. Well, thanks chaps, but I can understand why it's here. As Gary says, this is just a plan, not a loaded gun to hold against their heads in 6 months' time, and you should take everything said here with a pinch of salt. Not that there's ever any shortage of that. Now, I'm planning a separate video to walk through this roadmap, give you my opinions, and add to it with my own massive list of suggestions, so look out for that very soon. But just to pick out some particular highlights, apart from the planned polishes to the game before it can leave early access, something slated to happen by the end of the year, different tiers of workbenches are still very much planned. This is something that we've not heard much of lately, but it's good to know that it's still on the horizon. New arrowheads, although firmly wedged in concept limbo at the moment, are still very much intended, as is hair, that can not only be grown out, but cut as well. Particularly exciting, though, is news of parented offset movement, which in layman's terms means that players can have freedom of movement on large moving objects such as, get this, hot air balloon decks, pickup truck beds, or large rafts. Just take a moment to let that soak in. Could we eventually take to the skies and rain down terror on our friends and enemies? According to this, yes. Talking also of rafts, new spawn options are being looked into, such as a barge that circles the island, allowing you to jump off at any point and swim to shore. And if you thought these were good though, it's the long-term plan section of the roadmap that contains the juiciest news, and just listen to some of these. Electricity with automated systems, pressure pads to open doors and turn on lights. Vehicles such as hot air balloons, carts, cars, rafts and boats. Finally, being able to ride horses. And maybe even hogs. Plus, sitting in chairs and using wall-mounted machine guns. Radios and telephones. More events, such as a cargo ship crash and special airdrops that will need defending for a time before they can be opened. Prototype weapons that players can cobble together themselves. A surrendering mechanic with blindfolds, handcuffs, kinky, and interrogation minigames. Mortar cannons, tier 2 cooking. No mention of pies, but I'm staying hopeful. Multiple islands, underwater exploration, bounties, CCTV, emails, and the Holy Grail, a whitelist version of Rust. Phew, big words, but also potentially big fun. And of course, as many of you will no doubt be muttering under your breath, a lot of these concepts have been kicking around for donkey's years. But it is good to finally see them in a written list though, I'm sure you'll agree. As with anything like this, of course, time will tell, and the proof of the pie is in the eating. So I'd recommend cautious optimism, and if I end up producing another 20 or so episodes of Concept Limbo in a year's time, then you'll know what's happened. You can read the whole thing for yourself, and I'll put a link in the description for you, but as I say, I'll be dedicating an entire video to it very soon, so you could just wait for that instead. Back to the rest of the dev blog now, and the new learnable recoil system that's currently being tested had a couple of tweaks this week. On the LR300, for instance, the horizontal recoil doesn't kick in until the 4th or 5th shot, meaning that it's easier to control in bursts. Also, the player recoil comp convar now actually works, meaning you can turn off recoil compensation in the console if you wish. Flashlights, laser sights, and indeed searchlights have all received a flare effect this week, making them not only more useful at night, but also a viable means of blinding other players, and in the case of the searchlight makes it easier for the user to stay hidden behind the glare. The heli searchlight also had an adjustment as the brightness was far too low and there was a bug which meant it was pointing at the wrong place most of the time. Some ore harvesting bugs were squished too. There was a bit of weird behaviour with certain tools that meant you wouldn't get the amount of resources you were supposed to, but now you should be able to reliably count on getting the right numbers. Optimizations continued, with the main focus being reducing the amount of unnecessary garbage collections to eliminate random frame rate drops. Areas targeted included projectiles, ragdolls, corpses, effects, and player meshes, and although it's a work in progress, you should hopefully start seeing some better performance. It's also time for a sale, with some changes that should help out in the early game. Hide armor now costs about half what it used to, bone armor requires 1 rope instead of 2, stone pickaxes cost exactly the same as stone hatchets, and gutting a trout will yield 8 animal fat instead of the usual measly 3. Also, searchlights cost about half what they used to. Woohoo! Elsewhere, shore wetness was re-enabled, and burnt human meat now uses the correct icon instead of the burnt bear meat one. Over to works in progress now, and nothing exciting or new to report regarding Bradley or the scientists, I'm afraid. Just a lot of boring back-end ball bashing and nav mesh knocking, but necessary nonetheless. Interesting to hear though that although Bradley will be patrolling the launch site as his main day job, the plan is for him to dynamically navigate to hunt down players, and in the longer term, according to the roadmap, he'll be trundling around the island's road network too. Last week we were given back our icebergs, of course, but you may remember me saying that the whole damn northern biome was due for a complete rework. Well, cop a load of this. Instead of a flat, uniform smattering of virgin snow, things are going to start getting a lot lumpier. New textures are being added, with snow-mound meshes and patches of melting ice here and there, plus, in the bigger picture, as well as newer, sexier icebergs, you can expect to see floating ice sheets, frozen lakes, and some unique smallments, such as ships encased in the ice. Possibly. Talking of smallments, or small monuments, the sperm ket, or as so many of you kindly pointed out last week, the supermarket with letters missing, because I'm obviously too stupid to figure that out, and sarcasm is way beneath me, is coming along nicely. Props such as store counters, magazine stands, and a cash register have been grey-boxed, and texturing is underway. Here's a picky of the current progress. A gas station, or petrol station as we say in Blighty, is also in process, and although small, should be action-packed, thanks to multiple rooms such as a shop, garage, back office, warehouse, and toilets. And there'll also be a small tunnel that someone dug under the garage for some reason, and which has since collapsed, although rumour has it that it may reveal something. In addition, a hatch will lead to the roof of the building, where you'll find some more goodies. Lastly, the makeshift backpack has been textured. As you can see here, it might end up with a Cobalt logo as well, or elements from it, but as you can see, it's not far off being done. I want to know what you think to this week's news. Have you read the roadmap? If so, was it music to your ears or nails down a blackboard? Tell me all about it in the comments, please. Leave a like, support me by subscribing, and pay me an extended visit on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and my Steam group. I shall catch you all soon, but in the meantime, keep calm and stay rusty. Cheerio.